Hello, guys, and welcome to the Maths and Science Corner. And today we're going to be looking at optimization. We're going to look at what it means, and we're going to look at an example of optimization, right? So make sure that you like this video and you subscribe, comment, and share, right? So yeah, without wasting any time, let's just get straight into it, right? So what is optimization first, right? So when we talk about optimization, it simply means that we're trying to find, so we are finding the best solution to a problem, right? So this is the simplest way to explain optimization. It means that we are finding the best solution to a problem, having many solutions, right? So having many solutions with certain limits, right? So optimization, basically, this is what it means, right? We are finding the best solution to a problem, having many solutions with certain limits. So this certain limit is something that we also call, so this is something that we also call constraints, right? These limits are also called constraints. So what happens during optimization is that we are trying to find the best. So the best, that is important, best solution. So what is the best solution? It depends on what you are dealing with, right? In terms of a problem. Sometimes can mean, best can mean maximum, and sometimes best can mean minimum, right? So it depends on the situation that you're dealing with. It's either you want minimum or you want the maximum, right? So I'm gonna make an example. So let's say we have a company, right? So let me say example, right? So let's say we have a company, company, a company that wants to know the quantity of the quantity they need to produce, right? In order to minimize cost and maximize profit, right? So we know that all companies, right, most companies, their main goal is to make profit, right? So during that process of making profit, we also know that, okay, they also have cost, right? So if they have cost, then they must try to minimize those costs, but at the same time, they must also maximize their profit, right? So that is an example of where we're going to use optimization to find the best solution to the problem, right? Another example can be, let's just say, example 2. Let's say a student wants to know the number of hours he or she needs to study in order to get good grades, right? So this is also an example of optimization. It means we're saying that a student wants to know the number of hours he or she needs to study in order to get good grades. So this means what? So in this case, we could be maximizing what? So we try to maximize grades, right? trying to maximize grades, but we must also minimize what? To minimize maybe the hours, the number of hours of sleep, right? So these are the two examples. These are just two different examples of optimization, right? So in this case, the company wants to know the quantity they need to produce in order to minimize their cost and maximize their profit. And in this case of a student wants to know the number of hours he or she needs to study in order to get good grades, right? So that means they need to maximize their grades but also minimize the number of hours of sleep, right? So after that, we're gonna look at the mathematics behind optimization, right? So what do we do in mathematics in order to minimize and maximize, right? So we're gonna try to explain this whole thing with the example, right? So we have, okay, let me just say this first. Optimization problems can be represented can be represented using a function, right? So for example, in this case where we have a company that wants to know the quantity they need to produce in order to minimize their cost and maximize their profit, right? So we can have a function which shows that. We can have a profit function or we can have a cost function. So, and from that function we can see the amount that they need to produce in order to minimize and the amount they need to produce in order to maximize their profit, right? So we're going to look at an example. So let's say we have a company, right? Let me just write this. So let's just say, okay, a company sells a product, right? Company sells a product and their cost per unit is let's say, no, not the cost per unit, actually, sorry, it's their price per unit, right? Let's say their price per unit. So price per unit is defined by this function, right? By 50 minus 2x. So what does this price per unit mean? What does this 50 minus 2x mean? It means that if this company, for example, probably you've seen this maybe when you go shopping or something, maybe they say if you buy one, it's this price, but if you buy two, maybe the price reduces, right? So this is the way that the company is trying to attract buyers, right? So this is our price per unit. So it means that, let's say for example, you want to buy one unit, right? You need to buy just one product maybe. So it means that if your X is 1, right? So what is your price? What is the price that you're going to pay? So you're going to pay P of 1, right? Which is 50 minus 2 times 1, which is just 2, which is, in this case, let's say it's rands. So this is 48 rands, right? But then now let's say if you were buying two products, right, or 2 units, so that means X is 2, which means your price now is P of 2, which is 50 minus 2 times 2, which is what? 46, right? 46 rands. So you see now there's a difference. So if you buy 1 unit, you pay 48 rand. But if you're buying 2, right, you're going to pay 46 rand, right? You see the difference here. So this is the way of the company trying to, to attract buyers, saying that if you buy more, you pay less, but if you buy just 1 unit, then you pay more, right? So now, so they say this is their cost per unit, right? So then after that, let's say now um, we're trying to find the revenue, right? The revenue that this company can make. So we know that their revenue, right? So what is revenue? Revenue is the money that you make, right? So it's the money that you make from selling. So let's say you are selling something, right? If you sell that, the money that you make, let's say you sell 10 products, right? And each product you were selling it for 10 rand. Let's make an example. So that means you sold 10 products for 10 rand, which means you've made 100 rand, right? But then that money also includes your costs, right? So you haven't taken out the cost, it's just the revenue, the income that you've made, right? So our revenue will be what? It will be equal to the number of units sold, right? So the number of units sold multiplied by what? By the cost per unit, right? So what we are saying is that if you the number of units that you're gonna sell times the cost of each unit, right? The selling price, basically the cost to the customer. So this is the selling price, right? So actually this is not the cost per unit, this is price per unit. I'm always making this mistake. So this is price per unit, right? So this is the price to the customer, the price that the customer will pay, right? So this is the number of units sold multiplied by the price per unit. So this is what now, let's say we're just gonna say assume that we're selling X amount, right? We're selling X number of units. So that means if you're selling X units, what is going to be our revenue function? So what is our price per unit first? It's 50 minus X, right? 50 minus 2X, I mean. So this is what 50x minus 2x squared, right? So this is now what? This is what we call our revenue function, right? This is our revenue. It means that this is the money that we will make, right? Before we remove the cost. This is not the profit. This is just the money that you make from selling, right? Before you remove the cost. So this is not profit, right? Revenue is not profit. Let me just write this down. Revenue is not profit, right? So this is just the money that you get after selling. So if we look at this now, we're gonna say so this is our revenue function, right? But then now to find our profit, we're going to say profit. So you know what is the profit? Let's say obviously you buy something as someone who, let's say you want to sell sweets, right? And you buy, let's say one unit, let's say one, let me just make an example with what, let's say you're selling a sofa, right? You sell sofas. So and you bought as the company or as the businessman or as a sole trader, you buy that one couch, right? Buy that one sofa. Then let's say you buy it for 500 rands, right? Just make it an example. Then you sell it for 3,000 rands, right? So it means that you've made a profit of how much? The difference. You've made the difference, right? Which means you've made 2,500, right? So the same thing applies here. So your profit here will be what? Will be your revenue, which is the amount that you sell for, your revenue, right? Minus your cost, right? Right? So this will be your profit function. So and then let's say you were given that the cost of production is given by C of x is equal to 10x plus 20, right? Let's say you're given this. It means, what does this mean? So this is your cost function, right? Given this cost function. So what does this mean? It means that if you produce one, just one here, right? So it means the cost of producing just 1 unit will be 10, 1 plus 20, which is 30 rands, right? So it means the cost of producing one is 30 rands. That means you would make a profit of how much? If you look at your um, your price, your selling price is what for 1 unit. We said for 1 unit it's what 48 rands. So your profit for just selling 1 unit would be 48, right? Which is your revenue minus 30. So this is 18 rands, right? You would make a profit of 18 rands. But then we are not dealing with just one product, we're dealing with many products, right? So we can represent this using the function, the revenue function, right? Instead of just dealing with one product, which is just 48 rands, we can deal with the general revenue function. So our revenue function is what? 50 minus 2x squared, right? Minus our cost function, which is 10x plus 20, right? So this gives us what? So this gives us negative 2x squared plus 40 plus 40x minus 20, right? So this is our profit function, right? So this is our P of x. So this is profit. This is our profit function right now. So this, remember we said in the beginning, we say what are we trying to maximize? We're trying to maximize the profit. We're trying to maximize our profit, right? So if we are given this function and they say find the maximum profit that the company can make, right? The maximum profit that the company can make. So before we find the maximum profit, we need to understand, we need to find the number of units that they need to sell, right? So we need to find the x, right? We need to find x, the number of units that they need to sell in order to make maximum profit, right? So to do that, we use a technique which is differentiation. We know that to find the minimum or the maximum, we let the derivative of the function that we want to maximize or minimize, and we let the first derivative equal to 0, right? So if you look at the first derivative of this function, it's negative 4x plus 40, right? So this is equal to what? 0. So if we solve for x here, so this is 4x is equal to 40. So our x is equal to 10, right? So now we know that in order to make maximum profit, let me just write this down. We must produce 10 units in order to make maximum profit, right? Not maximum profit. So from here we know that okay, we need to produce how many? 10 units, right? So this means we're gonna look at it at what our we're gonna look at our profit function, right? So this is our profit function is equal to negative 2x squared plus 40x minus 20, right? So what we can do now is that we just say P of 10, right? Because we want to find the maximum profit for when the amount of units that we are producing is 10 units, right? So this is negative 2 10 squared plus 40x minus 40 times 10, right? Minus 20, which is equal to what? It's equal to 180. So this is the maximum profit that we can make, right? This is the maximum profit that the company can make. So it means that to conclude this, we can say that the company must produce 10 units in order to generate maximum profit. So the way that you can see this also is that you can try to represent this using a graph, right? You can try to draw this profit function in order to see why we are saying that at this point it is 10. So if you were to draw this function, you would see that it looks something like this, right? Let me just see. Right? So if you were to draw this, if this is your negative 20, which is our y-intercept, let's look at this, which is our y-intercept, right? So you would see that the function looks something like this. Right? So if it looks something like this, then we know that, okay, at this point, this is our 180, right? 180 rands. This is our, if we look at the x-axis, right? So this is our profit. This is our y-axis is profit, and this is the number of units produced, right? So we see that we get the maximum, which is 180, when the number of units produced is equal to 10, right? So when we produce 10 amounts or 10 units of whatever that we're selling, we get a maximum profit of how much? Of 180. So yeah, that is it. That's how optimization works. Thank you.